let's say a prayer, and then we got some cool stuff to talk about tonight. Father, we are so grateful for you, God, that you would choose to call us out of darkness, that you would choose to knit us together in our mother's wombs. God, one of the first things that you tell us to do, God, is have no other God besides me. And I don't think that's because you're arrogant or conceited or just want attention. I think it's because you're really looking out for what's best for us. And that you know that when we put you as first in our lives, that you're really going to take care of every little aspect of our lives. And when we go to other things for that, God, we've known, we have so many stories in this room of how that just doesn't go well for us. And God, we know that you're such an incredible father and dad that just cares so much about who we are, and wants us to kind of put you first, because you know that's just going to be the healthiest way that we can possibly live life. God, I pray that you'd speak through our studies tonight, that you would just kind of really speak through your scriptures and help us leave changed and wanting to know you deeper and deeper. God, we love you so much. In your son's name, amen. Guys, turn to 1 Peter chapter 2. Guys, it's awesome. You know, this is anybody know what we did here with this screen? We couldn't get this to work, and so we had to use this guy, right here. And so that right there is masterful on using your resources, right? So really, and guys, tonight, it's really good to have some of the Georgia Tech crew with us tonight. On fall break, and so they've just been vacationing the last 2 days, and so we gotta maybe after this you can just go kind of boo them for a second or something like that, because you was letting away. But then you guys are the ones that get all of Thanksgiving off, and they have to go to school during Thanksgiving, right? So it's good to have you guys with us. Guys, we're only together just with Georgia State for this time together, and then a couple more through October, and then we're back together with Georgia Tech for the rest of the semester right here. And so it's going to be just fun being all back together and stuff like that. But tonight, the way we're going to start off is I got one of my really good friends and one of the most inspiring guys I know that's just going to be bringing the word for us for a little bit. And his name is Juan. And so, Juan, why don't you come down and let's give our attention to what Juan has to share and teach us tonight.
Yeah, so my name is Juan, for those who don't know me. I'm a 5th-year computer science major. And this Friday, I'm actually turning 4 years old as a disciple. So, I guess my first question is, who's been in a fight before?
Doesn't count. You want to share? Yeah. I've been in a fair amount of scraps in my day. But good thing is I kept it outside of school because I was trying to get in trouble in school. So I just kept it in the streets.
Back in my neighborhood, this kid put a booger on my back.
No.
Threw my bike in the street. So I sat out.
Okay.
So Jason tells the story a lot better, so I'll let you tell.
Oh, cool. This was 3 years ago when we were freshmen. And we were roommates. But we were not very loving to each other. And one day we were messing around. We played rugby a little bit. And he hit me really hard, like 5 something. I got mad, I pushed him like that much, so I was trying to do it again. And then he did it again, he tackled me this time. And so I got him in his face, and we were about to scrap. And then I was like, I looked down at his hand, he was wearing one of those big, super like, those high school rings, and I realized if I hit it, my face would be gone. And so we didn't end up fighting, but not hard, I was going to do it.
Thank you guys for sharing. I hope we're not fighting. But do you guys know that we're actually in a fight every day? Let's go to 1 Peter 2. Come on. says, "Dear friends, I urge you, as foreigners and exiles, to abstain from sinful desires, which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify good on the day He visits." And so right here in verse 11, we see that that Peter's telling us to like abstain from sinful desires, which like wage war against us. And so, do you guys know what, do you guys know what the Greek word for abstain is? To abstain? No. Hit the next slide. So it's apeho, which means to hold back, keep off, prevent. And so that's definitely something I really had to grow in my spiritual walk, like learning how to keep away from my sinful desires. And one of the verses that really helped me was Ephesians 6. So you guys want to flip there?
Let's go, Juan.
All right, Juan.
And so this is specifically verse 12 is my favorite verse, but we're going to be starting in verse 10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And so right here it says like our battle isn't against flesh and blood. It isn't against each other, but it's against all these things listed here. But I think at the end of the day, it's a battle against even ourselves, even the lies and doubts we have in us, that like the devil puts in our minds.
Yeah.
And this war is against our thoughts and desires, and like our desires ultimately rule our lives. And like even in like Matthew 6:21, it says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be." So like if your desires aren't aligning with God, like something's wrong. And so I've talked about it before, but like one of the biggest struggles for me was purity, just lusting, watching pornography, masturbation and stuff like that. And one of the verses that really helped me was 1 Corinthians 9:24-27. But I've talked about that before, so if you want to learn my story of that, just come talk to me afterwards. But one of the biggest battles I really had to overcome was my comfort zone, getting out of my comfort zone. And so, as I said, I'm turning 4 as a disciple this Friday. And 4 years ago, even 5 years ago, I wouldn't see myself speaking to like a crowd of somebody. And like I could say I'm like a hardcore introvert in some sense. But I don't know if your high school had superlatives, like the best eyes, best shoot game, or whatever. But I was like, in my high school, I was probably the most quiet. That's how like quiet I was. That's how introverted I was. And like, the first few years as a disciple were still kind of hard for me to like come out of my bubble. And like one of the verses I always went back to was Matthew 28, verse 18-20, which says like we need to go make disciples of all nations. Right. Another verse is Luke 9:23 that says whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. And like those two verses really I really go to often because like Jesus tells us to go make disciples. I'm not gonna make disciples if I'm in my own bubble. If I'm not speaking to anyone. And so I really had to even get corrected in that, get challenged in that. And I'm not saying that I'm an extrovert now. I still need times to be alone. Like Jesus had those times as well where he retreated and prayed alone. And I think another thing I had to really overcome was even with my introvertness and getting out of my comfort zone is like learning how to love people. Because since I didn't really know how to like talk or like converse with people, that's something I had to grow in. And so even the first summer as a Christian, I stayed at home. Didn't come to like the summer Bible talk or anything. I was just being lazy. And I guess some sin was building up. And so I wasn't really encouraging anyone. And vice versa. No one was encouraging me because I wasn't around the body. Like in Hebrews 3:13, it says, "But encourage one another daily as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin, deceitfulness." And so I definitely struggled that first summer. And like I had to learn how to love and encourage others as well. And so even going back to Ephesians 6, it like talks about putting that armor of God on. In verse 13, "Therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace." In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil, and take the helmet of salvation and of the sword and of the Spirit, and which is the word of God. And so I really have to deny myself and trust in God's armor, trust in God. And even going into the retreats, I always went into the retreats, like it's coming up this Friday, but yeah, going into the retreats, I always was seeking in myself what I actually needed to grow in, or like what war was waging against me at that moment before the retreat. And so that really helped me choose what classes I needed to go to the retreat, whether it was like private class or purity class. I did the class, and so I like really encourage you guys to really reflect before the retreat to really see where that war is waging against you, man. And even like the retreat was a good time for me to even confess and pray with someone. That I can be open to fight together with someone, with the brothers and stuff. And that's everything I had. And I think Nick is gonna.
Come on, Juan.
Yeah, Juan. Yeah,
You know, Juan, for me, I remember meeting Juan kind of when he was first starting to study the Bible, first came out, and Brody introduced him to me, and we were just kind of talking for a second. And I would hear stories later on where Juan, like, people had to kind of help him to say more than like 10 to 15 words at a time, right? Like that was kind of his main thing that he had to work on for a long time, just saying more than like 10 words, right? And then later on, he and I would have the opportunity to go to Costa Rica together, to kind of go on a little mission team out there, and we basically go on campus and just share our faith with anybody that we could find over there at the universities in Costa Rica. And so for me, I speak about like a kindergarten level, Spanish right here, right? So if I'm talking to a 7-year-old, I'm rocking. But if I'm talking to anybody above that, it's a little bit rough. And so the guy that would translate for me was Juan. And so me and Juan sat there, and we would kind of be talking to this guy, and he would have no idea what I would say, but Juan was translating me, And so what I would do, for those of you guys that have been in a study with me before, I tend to talk a lot. I tend to use a lot of random analogies and stuff like that you half the time make up on the spot. And so I remember this guy I was talking to really into soccer, and I was talking about soccer, and then I was making this analogy probably about like an ant and all this kind of stuff. I'm just talking to him, and it's kind of like saying all this kind of stuff, and I turn to Juan, I'm like, dude, all right, like you got it. And he turns to him and just basically says, Nick just wants to know that God loves you. And then he kind of turns back to me and is like, all right. I'm like, that's all this guy probably needed right here. That's all he needed. And I needed Juan to interpret everything, just kind of boil it down to simple basics. But for me, in my life, I've come across a lot of different people that have inspired me throughout my life. And a lot of times it's easy to kind of be inspired by that person that just rallies a crowd, right? And it's kind of the Braveheart type person out there, or the person that's like a celebrity. It's really just kind of, the LeBron James type person out there, the great, just people that can stand in front of a crowd and are super extroverted and all this kind of stuff. But there have been very few people in my life that I've been more inspired by than Juan Cortes. And for me in my life, he's been a guy that I have learned so much from. And it's not because of all the stuff that he's like taught me with his mouth, but I've watched his life, I've watched who he is, and it's deeply inspiring. It's reminding me a lot of David, the guy that we're going to be studying about a lot at the retreat, where Jesse, kind of David's dad, brought together all of his sons. They're like, okay, Samuel's coming to pick a king, and so he brings together all of his sons that were kind of like king material. And it goes through all of them, and then Samuel's like, no, none of these guys are it. Do you have anybody else? I'm like, oh yeah, we got this guy that's a shepherd out in the back, and he's just kind of the young boy that, he's not like king material, whatever, kind of thing. And God's like, no, that's the exact guy I want right there. Why? Because his heart is just like mine. He's like, man doesn't look at what God doesn't look at what everybody else looks at, where everybody else looks at kind of the talent and the skill and the larger than life kind of personality. God looks at people's heart. And I really believe if we all have Juan's heart in here, that this world would be so much different. And it'd be such a better place. And he's inspired me, and he's been one of my heroes in the last few years that I've known him, just because of his character and his heart and who he is. And I feel like it's an honor and a treasure to have him share with us the wisdom that he's developed. As you notice, he's sharing 10 scriptures right there, right? Yeah. Stuff that's just emblazed on his mind and on his heart. And stuff that you look at his Bible and it's color-coded all over the place. And it's just this, he's a guy that just really inspires me. And somebody I'm like, Juan, I want to be like you, man. And I feel like we all can really learn from him and what he's done really for God. He really loves God a ton. So Juan, thanks for bringing that for us. We're going to go a little bit more here in 1 Peter. All right, let's go back to 1 Peter chapter 2. I was going to show a clip of Endgame, and it's kind of the last battle. I'm actually going to see real quick if it works. If I can sync up the sound and the thing at the same time. Okay, you ready? If it doesn't work, don't really worry about it. If it doesn't work in the next 2 seconds, we're not going to worry about it. You guys know what happens. It's like Captain America standing right there at the very end, and all of a sudden.
What did he say? On your left?
Yes.
Oh, that's clicking the wrong thing. Black Panther comes out, does his thing. But then this epic army comes out. Spiritual battle that's over you, right? There's a little part in there where you see the two armies kind of colliding, and I kind of imagine this me standing right in the middle. It's kind of waiting, and where I have no idea what's happening, but going on in the spiritual kind of realm is this epic battle that's going on to really save you. There's a whole army of people that are trying to come and tear you down. They're trying to come and fight you. They're trying to steal you away from God. And there's God's army right there ready to catch you. And really has no chance of being defeated as long as you kind of stay firm right there, right? And that's kind of what Juan is talking about. Is the people that are really going to make it, there's this epic kind of battle going on for you. But there's this epic battle, going on in our own minds as well. And it's that battle between our own desires and then what God desires. And we're lied to every single day, right? Where we're kind of bombarded with lies like, hey, this is really going to make you happy right here. Or this is really going to satisfy you. Or if you do this, no one's really going to care. It doesn't matter. Just do it a little bit and no one's going to see it, right? And there's these lies that kind of go on in our brain over and over again all throughout the day. Or you have these critical thoughts of people. You're like, I'm thinking this way about somebody, but then you hear this other voice like, no, that person's amazing. Don't think that way about them. And you're like, dang, it's kind of those, two things on your shoulders, you know what I'm saying? The angel and being on your shoulder. It's kind of like going back and forth, and you're like, what's going on? And that's what he's saying right here is like, you have to abstain from sinful desires because that wages war on your soul. Sinful desires aren't just something that are bad because God's like, well, yeah, I don't like sin, so you shouldn't do that, right? It's this kind of rule. Sinful desires and kind of things that are against God literally wage war on your soul. desiring to devour you. And so what God is saying is like, hey, I'm right here. Hang out with me. Do what I would have you do. You stick close to me, and guess what? Everything's going to be okay. You just got to stay close to me right here, right? He goes on in verse 13. He says, submit yourself for the Lord's sake to every human authority. Wow, someone this little thing right here is awesome. We're just going to leave it right there. But it says, submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human authority, whether to the emperor as the supreme authority, or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. Which is kind of a crazy concept, but we hate that concept a little bit as millennials, right? The idea of like, hey, the president, the police out there, your teachers, your parents, the Bible actually says we're supposed to submit to those people. We're not supposed to rebel against those people. And it's because they're awesome and we should like, wow, I love the president and stuff like that. No, it's for the Lord's sake. It's for Jesus that you're serving. He's saying, no, submit to those kind of people because those people are in authority. And it's going to go a lot better for you if you just can kind of submit to them. Right. That's a whole other sermon in itself, right? We're not going to dive into that one as much. But it's really good for us to remember that. Verse 15, it says, for it is God's will that by doing good, you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish people. I like this. Live as free people. But don't use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as God's slaves. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God. Honor the emperor. It's right there. He's saying, hey, the best way, if you really want to get back at somebody that you're kind of mad at, me and Gabe were talking about this today a little bit. If you really want to kind of get back at somebody, the best thing you can do is be kind to them. The best thing you can do is love them. The best thing you can do when they're kind of throwing all these accusations at you is just to do good to them. You're like, wait, that doesn't work. You know, if they're mad at me, I'm supposed to be mad right back at them, right? Like that's what works. Like it's if they say something bad about me, I gotta say something bad about them, or I gotta get defensive and say and kind of point out all their flaws. It's like, nope. The best thing you can do is just continue to do good. Continue to stay strong. Continue to be kind. Continue to love them, right? And he says, hey, this is a command. Live as free people. That's kind of a cool command, right? Like, I'm kind of down with that command a little bit, right? He's like, but don't use your freedom as a cover-up for evil, right? Because what's so easy and kind of, especially in Christianity today, where people say, dude, Jesus forgives you, you can do whatever you want, you're good to go, and so you're free, you can just do whatever. And so we tend to kind of get involved in sin and things we really regret, but then we're like, oh, but Jesus forgives me, so I'm all good. And what it tends to become is Christianity becomes kind of like your fire insurance card. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, I'm as long as if I mess up, I got my fire insurance card right here that's just going to get me back in the game, right? And as long as I kind of, as I just kind of say I believe in Jesus, then I can just kind of live whatever way I want, and then I'm standing before Jesus, it's like, oh, you believe in me, great. It doesn't matter how you live, right? And so often we can kind of think that way, but the Bible's saying, no. Live as free people, but don't use that freedom. Don't use what Jesus did for you now to kind of just do whatever you want. Right. And then he says something about, he says, live as God's slaves. Which I think that can kind of like rub us a little bit weird sometimes, right? It's like, wait, I thought slavery was wrong, or I didn't think that was a good thing. We're supposed to be God's slaves. And so let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into what that looks like. Okay, let's go over to Romans chapter 6. Come on, man. Kind of look at what Paul has to say. This is Peter talking about this. Let's see what his buddy Paul has to say. Romans 6. I would really encourage you to go back and read this whole entire passage. It's just an epic passage. But later on in verse kind of 15 down to 18, it talks about this idea of like, hey, we live under the law of grace, but at the same time, he's like, you're either one of two things. You're either a slave of sin, or you're a slave of righteousness. You're not like kind of one or the other. That word slave basically just means that you are, let's see what the actual definition is, a person who is dependent on or controlled by something is what a slave is. And so it says either you're a slave to sin, which is basically what? Like that can kind of sound religious again, right? It's like a slave to kind of doing whatever you think is right. And a slave to kind of your own desires. Whatever makes you feel good, you're like, that's what controls you. Can't we so often do that? It's like, man, I'm feeling tired today, so what I want to do? Netflix, right? Feed that desire. Man, I'm feeling hungry, so I'm going to go eat. You know, man, I'm feeling like I want to breathe, so you breathe, which is probably a good thing. You know what I'm saying? Or man, I'm feeling like I really just need to kind of go veg and kind of leave everybody else. Or, you know, I feel like I really need to do like angry vent session with somebody right now. Or I feel like, you know what, I've been good. I just need to complain right now. I'm just kind of complain about all the ways that things aren't going well for me. You know? Or I've talked nice about this person for so long. I'm just kind of, there's been some things that have been bugging me. I'm just going to kind of go gossip about them for a little bit, right? And it's kind of like whatever we want, then we end up kind of going and doing. It's kind of, we're controlled by our own desires.
Yeah.
We're enslaved by stuff.
Yeah.
Then he goes on, let's look at verse 20. He says, when you were slaves to sin, you were free from the control of righteousness. Basically saying, hey, when you were slaves to sin, you didn't have to worry about what God wanted.
Right.
Because you didn't follow God.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of one or the other, right? It's not like, hey, I'm a slave to sin, but I also really believe in God, right? It's like, no, it's one or the other. Even if you're a slave to sin, it means that you don't have to worry about God at all because he's not really going to kind of benefit you because you're not really all in for him, right? Then he kind of goes on and says, what benefit did you reap at that time from the things that you're now ashamed of? You know, so many of us can look back at the life that we used to live, or even the life that we live now,
Yeah.
and we look at the things that we're doing in life, and we're like, you know what? I know that this is benefiting me, like it's not benefiting me at all. Is these things I'm working so hard for, the things that I'm really kind of giving my all to, the things that I really wanted in life and craved in life, whether it was attention from people, whether it was a lot of money and greed, whether it was lying, what did that stuff get me? I mean, he says, what benefit did you get? Because when we look, we really don't get any benefit. There's nothing good that kind of comes from that stuff. All it ends up in is an unhealthy life. Then he says, those things result in what? Those things result in death.
That's right.
They don't result in just kind of you being unhappy. They don't result in kind of like God being a little bit upset. Those things result in death if you keep going down that road. But now that you've been set free from sin and you become slaves to God, the benefits that you reap leads to holiness. And that result is eternal life. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus, our Lord. You know, what is a wage, right? It's something that you earn. It's something that you work for, right, to get a wage. And a lot of us, we've been working a long time, and the stuff that we're earning is death. Right? We've been kind of working for a lot of different things, and we've been kind of, all of our desires been going towards this one thing. What is that leading us towards? Death. But it says, but then the gift, right? You don't earn God's forgiveness and grace. That's something you just say, God, I'm messed up. I need your help. I'm just going to accept your grace. I'm just going to get it as a free gift. And that's what God wants for you. But for all of us, right, what are some of the things you think that people are like enslaved by in kind of our demographic in our age? What are some of the things people get enslaved by? Shencha?
Relationships.
Relationships.
This perfect little bubble of this person. I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally. What does that mean that you're enslaved by it, right? It means basically like you want a relationship with somebody. So all of your thoughts and all of the things that you're controlled by kind of lead towards that particular desire. So when you're going to bed, you're kind of thinking about what's kind of the dream person that I want. You're kind of like, when you're getting dressed in the morning, you're kind of saying, okay, what's going to look best for this particular person? Or you're saying, now I'm going to the gym so that I can look like this for this particular person, right? Instead, you're saying, like, I'm building my whole entire life to be around these particular people so that maybe one of those people will kind of like me. And it's everything that you do is controlled by that desire to have a relationship. And that has messed up so many kinds of people, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't say, oh, I'm a slave to this person, because that sounds kind of dramatic. But if you think of it, right, as kind of like this idea of you're controlled by that person's thoughts, you're controlled by your feelings, and that is kind of what all of kind of your desires are surrounded by those things, then wow, maybe we are enslaved by those things. Chase?
Money, or like being successful.
Okay, yeah. So how are people kind of controlled by those things?
Like, when they're in school, all they think about is chasing the just paycheck or having a side gig or whatever, and it controls their life. Like every minute, second is thinking about the future, how they can do it, and not about the person next to them, right, and how they help or how they can serve or whatever. You know, their desire to be successful controls everything.
Totally. I mean, there's so many stories, and I'm sure, if you ask Kevin and Love about some of those stories, they've known people that have built their entire lives around comfortability and wealth. And Kevin worked as a doctor in a really great place like Duke University, and there was probably a lot of people there that everything that they were building their lives around was the prestige and career achievement and wealth. And even their own family, they would say, well, I'm working harder so I can take care of my family, but at the end of the day, is people that are really neglecting their family and so that they can even kind of give more, and they're losing that whole relationship with their family at the expense of, because they're controlled by the money and the achievement and the career. And so often we can do that, right? Especially in our academics, like Jaiko was kind of talking about, is in order for us to be the best in life that we can be, we center our whole entire life around school is the most important thing I can do. I need to study. I can't go to TNL because if I don't need to get an A+ on this thing so that I can get this, and this. And everything in our life is controlled, right? And kind of like surrounded by those kind of things. What else? Anybody else? Brie?
Yeah, I feel like something I've been enslaved to and I still can struggle with, like just being such a fear and just being, I think for me, like fearful of like conflict or like rubbing people the wrong way or like something being unpleasant, so I just like run away. Or like I don't want to bring up what I know you can bring up with that person. Or, you know, I think I can be enslaved to fear of what people think about me, so I don't want to be bold in my faith and step out, you know. I think that's been.
Totally. I think it's easy. Like, I know for me, somebody that's kind of has not lived kind of like a really worldly life for a long time, I can now be enslaved by kind of the church notoriety, right? And kind of like doing a lot of spiritual things in order to be kind of looked at good in front of other people, right? Or I'm thinking about everybody else. Do they think I'm spiritual? Do they think I'm a good, minister? Do they think I'm a good disciple? Am I doing all the right things? And then it doesn't become like I'm really kind of living for God. I'm living for the praise of other people, even when I'm doing a lot of spiritual things.
Yeah.
And so I study the Bible with people, but it's so that if somebody asks me, I can say, well, I'm studying, helping, 4 people right now, Or I'm kind of coming to everything just so, not even because I want to be there, but more just so I can say, oh, I'm showing up at everything and you think I'm a good Christian, right? I'm reading my Bible and I'm reading just kind of more reading it and praying so that if somebody asks me, hey, you reading the Bible? I'm like, yes, I've been reading this, and this, right? And more, it's not really about what we can do for God, but it more becomes kind of like we're trying to please everybody else around us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything else? Christy?
Yeah, pull down the top, but what am I not? I think I can really struggle with like being enslaved with like enslavement. I can sometimes just struggle to really see the truth and like the freedom in Christ and be like, well, all my life I've worked these wages, like I don't know anything else, like I don't know what freedom looks like. I don't know if I even want that because if I do that, that's just a foreign territory and like that comes with trust and like just all this like thing. And I don't know, it can be really hard sometimes to like read the Bible as truth and then my brain actually like whatever, formulate that, transfer it to my heart to form conviction. Like it's just like such a battle for me to actually be like, oh, you took the chains off and I'm like, oh, I can't, I don't know how to move. I can just be so obsessed with like, oh my gosh, like God, you did all these things for me, like I was such a sinner, like I just like my brain can just take me there sometimes. So honestly, sometimes I can feel enslaved with like just my guilt and just like that former life that I lived and still sometimes have the habits of in my new life. And so I'm like, cool, like really taking charge and actually like, yeah, just devouring like, okay, this is actually what he wants. This is actually a gift that I can accept and choose to accept. And so I think even that, I'm like, okay, like I have been free, but I can choose to actually go do something with it and like move is like a huge thing for me. So that's like a big struggle. Oh yeah, you're different, you're new, you're changed, you're saved, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Like hard.
Totally. I think, some of the other things I think of are things like people are enslaved by pornography. I think actually physically, that's kind of the modern day slavery. Sex trafficking and stuff like that. People are enslaved by those things. People are surround their whole day with how can I even just satisfy my lustful desires in some of those ways. People are enslaved by that, right?
Yeah.
People are enslaved by their own thoughts.
Yeah.
They take their own thoughts too seriously, right? Where they're thinking all these kind of things, and then now they're like kind of thinking, oh, I shouldn't have thought that, but I'm thinking this, or I'm thinking about this too deep, and now all of a sudden they're enslaved by their own thoughts and kind of their own feelings. They're not trusting God and keeping it simple. They're getting way too kind of complex when things they're not really meant to be that complex, right? And you're taking your own thoughts too seriously and being enslaved by those things. Some of the things I can think about are just kind of like, there's so many other things we can kind of go through. But let's go to Luke chapter 12 for a second. Me and Bree were over a couple's house last night that kind of mentors us with our marriage. And they're an awesome couple. The dad, he had 2 little girls. And the dad, he's a counselor and a therapist and works a lot with kind of some people that are going through some really intense things. And he was saying that it was just kind of a side comment as we were talking. He was saying that social media has plunged, especially young women, into an epidemic of depression, anxiety like the world has never seen. And it's this idea where social media has become an enslaving force in this world.
Yep.
And it's because, again, what does that stem from? It stems from what people think about you. You're enslaved to kind of trying to be original, right? Where, like, I want to be as original or kind of my own person as possible. It's like everything you do is kind of revolved around that. Or you're enslaved by your own image and what other people can see you as. And so social media is just kind of that master for you. That's kind of telling you like what you should look like, what you shouldn't look like, what you should have, what you shouldn't have. And it's plunged people. All these things that enslave us are the things, if you were to kind of talk about what the things you're most worried about right now, the things you're most anxious about right now, the things you kind of hurt about the most right now, it's usually those kind of things that are enslaving you. It's not God that's enslaving you. It's not those like kind of living for Him and His people that are enslaving you. It's you kind of buying into those lies that those things are going to be like your master and are really going to be able to satisfy you. Yeah. And so the things that a lot of times we deal with the most on a daily basis is not because of God, it's because it's a lack of Him. Because what did He make us to be right from the get-go? He made us to be free. He said, hey, when He created the garden, created Adam and Eve, He said, you guys are free to eat from anything in the garden. You're free. I made you to walk with me, freedom. Just us two. It's gonna be incredible. He's like, just don't do this because it's gonna hurt you. And you do not want to go close to that thing. But what do we tend to do? We're like, I don't know. I kind of want that. And so we kind of go towards those desires. But God didn't create us to be kind of enslaved by things. He created us to be free. We enslave ourselves. And God is calling us back to that freedom that He originally purposed for us. And so when it talks about Jesus kind of being our master, what kind of master is Jesus?
Yeah.
So I think often the way that we can start looking at God is kind of like that slave master. Or is kind of like that kind of boss that like is just kind of telling us what to do all the time. Or is a teacher that's kind of telling us things and at the end of life is going to give us a grade. And we can kind of live in this fear of God that we can't really be free around God because I'm kind of scared that if I mess up, He's going to be right there and tell me, wow, great job. I gave you all this stuff and you messed up. You're terrible. You know, why did I die for you? Why did I do all these things for you? And we're just going to kind of dive back into those kind of enslaving thoughts. Let's check out what kind of master that Jesus talks about that He is. It's really cool. Over in Luke chapter 12, you guys are turning there, but I got to turn there now. This is one of my favorite stories. We got to go on this class. Okay, Luke chapter 12. It's a parable from Jesus in verse 35, okay? Love this parable. He says, be dressed and ready for service, and keep your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. You know, so right here, what is Jesus talking about? He's like, hey, okay, be dressed and ready for service. What does that mean? Okay, like think about a couple of servants that are waiting for their master to come home from this big party. And so they're kind of waiting for him, and somehow they're waiting eagerly. Like, man, I can't wait for this guy to get home. I can't wait to serve him. I can't wait to give him stuff. You know, it's like, okay, I'm just waiting for him because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm here for him. And so they're eagerly expecting for this master to come back. It could be at any point, right? It says keep your lamps burning because he might come at 2 a.m., right? And so you're waiting for him. You're excited for him. You're standing there and you're dressed and you're ready. Let's see what happens when the master comes. In verse 37, it says, it will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. I think a lot of times we read that, and I think in some ways the way we should read that is, okay, we have no idea when Jesus is going to come back. And so we got to sit here and we got to be ready. We can't be off kind of being enslaved by our own stuff. We got to be right here. We got to be dressed. And we got to be ready. Even if it's 2 a.m., I'm ready. Even if it's in my darkest moment, I'm ready. If Jesus could come back tomorrow, so I'm not giving this up. I'm standing firm, like what Juan was talking about. I'm not letting those things in my life take me down. I'm standing firm. I'm here. Let's do this. I'm ready. I'm dressed and ready for service. And that's how we can read it and say, okay, the guy comes home. And he's like, well done. You guys are dressed and ready. Now you can serve me, and it's going to be great. And so, but there's a little bit of an ending to the story that I think if people were listening to it, they would have been like, we've never, like that thought is crazy. This is what it says. It says, truly I tell you, the master will dress himself to serve. Will have them recline at the table and will come and wait on them. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or toward daybreak. You know, what happens is these servants they're kind of waiting there. They're like, oh, I can't wait for my master to come back. Somehow they're eagerly waiting, which shows you that they probably had this good relationship, right, with their master. That they're excited for him to come back. They're not like kind of scared, like, oh no, he might come back and punish me and tear me apart, or maybe I'm not doing the right thing. He's like, no, I can't wait for him to come back. It's gonna be this epic thing. I can't wait to serve him, right? Then he kind of comes and he knocks on the door. They're like, why is he knocking on the door of his own house? You know, it doesn't really make any sense. Some people, if you kind of read this further, think that maybe the wedding banquet, if it's a rich guy, was happening in another part of the house. And he kind of snuck away from the banquet while it was still going on because he realized his servants weren't getting a chance to enjoy the party. And so he comes and kind of knocks on it, so he doesn't like kind of come in and create this kind of chaos. So he comes in and knocks, and then he says, okay guys, and he's here, and they're all ready to serve him. Then he kind of goes to the back room. Like, where'd he go? You know, and he kind of comes back out, and he's wearing servant's clothes. He's like, hey guys, guess what? It's on me tonight. He's like, go sit at the table. He's like, I'm here to serve you guys tonight. I want to leave the party because you guys are where it's at. Like, I love hanging out with you. And that's what God, and that's what Jesus feels about us. But he's like, I'm leaving it. He's like, I actually brought kind of this food with us, right? Because it says that he immediately kind of has him reclining on the table, doesn't go prepare food. He probably brought food with him from the bank. He's like, guys, I've been stashing this away for us. So we're going to have this party together. And he kind of puts it out. He's like, guys, circle around the table. It's going to be this epic banquet we're going to have together. I can't wait to serve you. That's who our master is.
Amen.
He's not a master who's saying, wow, I showed up, now it's good that you're serving me. He's saying, no. He's like, if you are hanging out with me, if you're ready for me, I can't wait to come and really serve you. That's my goal. I'm your slave. And that's the kind of the crazy thing about Jesus, that Jesus is actually wants to be our slave. He wants to be our servant. And he comes in to really serve us. He's like, guys, I can't wait for us to kind of have this incredible party together. But the only way that you're really going to enjoy the benefits of being served by the master is if you're dressed in red. Because if you're just kind of like laying around, kind of being lazy, or kind of going off to your own selfish desires, when he comes and he doesn't find you there, I think instead of kind of being like ticked off, he's just going to be bummed. He's like, man, I wanted so bad just to kind of be in this together, but you were off kind of doing your own thing, and you were sleeping, or you were off kind of chasing some other master. You know, I think just a story of my life, and we'll kind of close it out. When I was a freshman in college, after my freshman year, I went and I interned for a church out in San Diego. And you guys, some of you guys have heard me tell this story before. But basically, I was helping out a bunch of high school kids there, and basically kind of like got this girl was kind of manipulative with me, and I kind of like let a lot of my boundaries down with a girl that was a little bit older than I was, or a sister of one of the girls in the team ministry there. And I kind of just like let a lot of my guards down. Whereas towards the end of my time in San Diego, I was trying to help her spiritually, but then it turned into like, no, then I started kind of making out with her towards the end of my time in San Diego, the last few days. Where I totally said, hey, I love God, and I'm trying to help you know Jesus. But then I just kind of took advantage of her like I didn't care about Jesus at all. And then what I would do is I would go and lie about it with people. I remember one time, you know, like we were in the car at 2 a.m. and her mom called on the phone and said, where are you? Are you with the boy? And she said, no, I'm not. And this was a woman that was, you know, a disciple in the church that I knew of. Was actually the administrator of the church that was helping me kind of get my paycheck and stuff like that. And I remember just kind of sitting there, I just got like, just so ashamed of what I was doing. But I kept going. I kept doing it, right? And I think, you know, I'm so glad I moved back to Boston, you know, when I did, because I don't know what would have happened if I just kind of kept down that road of lies. I was kind of like I was getting enslaved to, right? And so I didn't tell anybody about it. Like, moved back to Boston, nothing more than that happened. But I moved back to Boston. I didn't tell anybody about it for a month because I was way too ashamed. Then I went to something like this, and someone was giving a big talk about confession. I was like, okay, you know, and talking about like just the need to confess your sin and kind of get in the light about things so you can really be healed. I was like, dang. And so I remember texting my buddy I was working with out there, and hey, we set up some time this week to talk. So I talked to him, and I told him everything that happened, right? And he said, hey, I think you need to talk to your dad. So I went and talked to my dad and told him what happened. Then I went and told kind of my boss, the guy that was like my greatest mentor there. His name is John. He's an awesome dude. That was like one of my greatest mentors of my life. Was my hero. And I told him that he was extremely disappointed in me. And it was one of those where it was like, I had great responses from the other, like my best friend and my dad, like, Nick, it's all good, man. But his response was more like, dude, I feel extremely deceived by you. And you've totally hurt me because you lied to me, right? And so I just felt completely ashamed. Later on, he would text me a few months later and say, Nick, I don't think you did this the right way. I think you just tried to wipe your hands clean and kind of confess it, but then you kind of left her out in the dust. You need to go back and apologize to her, and you need to do some other things, right? So I went back and I apologized to her. I talked to this guy's wife and confessed to her everything. I called this girl's dad, and I told her, her dad everything. And I was bawling my eyes out, right? And even like 4 years later, I'm like telling my mom's gonna go back to San Diego, and so I had to tell her, and I was bawling my eyes out like 4 years after all this kind of stuff happened, because I didn't want her to find like this out, besides like coming from me, right? Then I remember seeing this guy John like 4 or 5 years later at a conference, and I asked him, and I remember seeing him, and it was the first time I'd seen him since all that stuff. And we were hanging out. He's really close to my family. He kind of was one of my main babysitters and heroes growing up. And so I remember kind of like we're in a room with him, and I just told him again. I said, John, I just want to really deeply apologize for all that I did, 4 or 5 years ago. I'm so sorry. I'm ashamed. Because first, when I saw him, it's like those are the only thoughts I had, right? Like shame and guilt, and I've messed up, and you're deceived, and you're disappointed in me, and our relationship is ruined, right? And so we're sitting there, and he's like, Nick, do you still think about that stuff? I said, yeah, I think about that stuff every time I see you. And that's all I've been thinking about right here. He's like, dude, it's like, I haven't thought about that in 4 or 5 years. He said, I haven't thought about that since the last time we talked. I said, dude, I totally forgive you. And I've forgiven you. I've like felt forgiven of you for the last 4 or 5 years. And we're totally good. We're totally clear and clean. And I remember right there, just broke down weeping. So I was like, I felt so free, I wasn't like enslaved by my guilt and my shame, all the stuff I had done. Now I can kind of live this free life of knowing that I'm forgiven and I'm free. I don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff that was just kind of battling over and over in my mind, And I think for us, we can approach God so often in that way. We come to God and say, God, again, I just want to tell you I'm sorry. I just want to tell you that I'm so ashamed of what I've done. I can't believe this. And he's just like, why are you still enslaved by those thoughts? Don't you know I've totally forgiven you of all that kind of stuff? Don't worry about it. That stuff, you can never disappoint me again. He's like, as long as you kind of hang out with me and you're willing to kind of live with me right here, you're 100% forgiven. I don't think about that thing ever. I see Jesus when I see you. And I think that's what God thinks about us. And he wants us to live with that mindset. Live free in that way. Not live enslaved by everything else. Live as his slaves. That can now be free, and we can stand before God like, God, we're best friends, and we have no guilt, no shame. We can live in the light, and we can really live that incredible free life that God's told us to. We're going to end out tonight. Jared's going to close us out, and then we're just going to do some other things. All right, let's say a quick prayer. God, thanks so much just for all the ways that you've forgiven us, all the ways, God, that you love us and care about us, God. We are so undeserving of the incredible master that you are. God, I'm like blown away that you would want to, that we're your servants, but you really just want to put us at the table and really serve us. You want to wash the dirtiest parts of us. You want to wash our feet. You want to forgive us of everything. You want to give us every good and perfect gift. God, you want to give us the world. You want to give us freedom. And God, that's just kind of the master that you are. God, please help us not go to those worthless idols that Jaiko was talking about. Yeah. Those things that just don't satisfy us at all, that actually just kind of make us more enslaved, kind of like dive us deeper into darkness and stuff like that, God. We don't want to go towards those things. And I know so many of us are kind of in that cycle right now, and I pray that you'd help us just break those things. Abstain from those sinful desires, God, that wage war against our soul, and really try to just focus in on you, God, and focus in on really making you proud and running to you and being your servants, God, because we know that's the greatest life we could possibly live. Thank you so much for forgiving us, God, for loving us. You're the best. In your son's name we pray. Amen.